Hello everybody, my name is Michael Wagner. I teach at the Westphal College of Media Arts and Design at Drexel University in Philadelphia, and on this channel I talk about digital media, game design and spatial audio. Now, a couple of weeks ago I did a video on how to create Dolby Atmos music content using DaVinci Resolve Fairlight. And based on that video, I got a lot of questions, and many of those questions were with respect to how do I actually export Dolby Atmos music content in DaVinci Resolve. I didn't show that in that video, and so I figured it makes sense to follow up and do a little video and demonstrate how to actually export the Dolby Atmos master file from DaVinci Resolve Fairlight, because there is some confusion in terms of what DaVinci Resolve is capable and what not. And the most important thing is that you have a self-contained workflow for Dolby Atmos music within the DaVinci Resolve Fairlight digital audio workstation. And I simply wanted to demonstrate how to do that. Now, we're not only going to export a Dolby Atmos master file from DaVinci Resolve, we're actually going to then import the Dolby Atmos master file back into Nuendo in order to check if the output of DaVinci Resolve is actually the way it's supposed to be. So if you're interested in how to create the Dolby Atmos music export from DaVinci Resolve Fairlight, stay tuned. We are going to essentially have a look at that. Now, how do I start? Well, I'm going to start with an already existing project, and it's a fairly simple one. I just used the drum loop and the bass loop that I created a while back, and I'm not going to go through all the individual steps that you need to take in order to create DaVinci Resolve, Dolby Atmos music in DaVinci Resolve. If you're interested in those things, I refer you to the videos that I did previously. You will find the links in the description below. But just to get through the main things, the first thing in order to create Dolby Atmos music content is that in DaVinci Resolve, you actually need to enable the Dolby Atmos music or Dolby Atmos content. And the way to do that is to go into the DaVinci Resolve preferences, and they actually changed that from the previous versions to the most current version. Previously, you had to change that in the project settings. Now it's actually directly in the DaVinci Resolve settings. So if you go to the video and audio input-output, you will find a section that's called immersive audio, and make sure that you have Dolby Atmos enabled. I also would like to point out that from the time I did the last video to now, they also made some changes in the audio engine. I'm not going to talk about these things here, but one of the things that I found particularly interesting is that they now enable ASIO as something that I think has been dearly missed in DaVinci Resolve. So this might actually open up a couple of interesting options, and I might actually do a couple of future videos about that. But for the moment being, I'm going to leave everything the way it just is, use the system settings. They also made some changes to the control room. It became a little bit clearer on how that actually works, but we're also not going to use that here. So I'm going to just leave everything alone. The only thing, once again, that I'm doing is I'm enabling Dolby Atmos. Now, the way this file is set up, or this project is set up, is that I have a drum loop. The drum loop is going to be the bed of the Dolby Atmos music content, the Dolby Atmos music file, and the bass is going to be the object, one example object. Actually, it's going to be two example objects, because left and right channel are separate objects in Dolby Atmos. So the way I've set that up is that I took the master bus and I turned the master bus into a 7.1.2 Dolby Atmos file. That is sort of the format that is required for a bed. Now, technically, we wouldn't need it. It would actually be perfectly fine to just use the stereo file. But in order to stay within the requirements, or the kind of the expectations of what Dolby Atmos wants, it makes sense to essentially convert it into a 7.1.2 Dolby Atmos bed, so that we can actually route all 10 bed channels into the Dolby Atmos renderer. The second thing that I did is I needed to route the buses correctly, and the one thing that we're doing is we're taking the drum track and we're routing that into the bed. So in the bus assign, make sure that essentially everything that goes into the bed is actually also routed into that bed bus. Here I only have the drums track that is sort of routed into the bed bus. And the final thing, I need to also connect everything with the native Dolby Atmos renderer. So I'm going to go into the patch input-output settings, and I'm going to make sure that, first of all, the bus, which is the Dolby Atmos bed, is routed into the bus channels or the bed channels of the Dolby Atmos renderer, and the track, the one track that I'm having here, the track direct here, the bus track, the left and the right channel, are routed into the first two objects that I have here. Now, one thing that I need to point out, and that has also been a little bit a subject of confusion, is that the native renderer, the native Dolby Atmos renderer in DaVinci Resolve Fairlight is only stereo. So if you want to have a binaural render, you need actually an external renderer. Only the external renderer has the binaural render mode that allows you to render it binaurally. So this 2.0 is not binaural, that's just a stereo down mix. Now the consequence is that if you are monitoring or if you're creating Dolby Atmos content and you want to check if everything sounds good in a binaural render, you can't really do that internally in DaVinci Resolve. You would have to export the Dolby Atmos content and then essentially just play it back in a Dolby Atmos system. So that's the one disadvantage. So I just wanted to point that out because that also has been a little bit of a confusion. So let me just briefly see if everything sounds correctly. So let's start. So once again, I have the drums which go into the Dolby Atmos bed. And then I have an object, which is the bass, and the bass essentially I also did a little bit of a automation just to demonstrate how the automation is exported, and if it actually gets back, if we can actually get it back in when we re-import the Dolby Atmos file in Nuendo. And you can see that sort of the penner is moving the bass objects slowly forward. So that's really everything that there is to it. So how do I actually kind of export that? And that has been a little bit something that people seem to be confused about. And I think the main reason for that is because generally, if you are working with DaVinci Resolve, what you would expect is that you would go to the deliver page, and then in the deliver page, essentially in the audio settings, somehow export that in a Dolby Atmos format. Now, it is important to understand that the internal renderer or the export of the Dolby Atmos is internally only possible within the Fairlight DAW. So you can export Dolby Atmos content as Dolby Atmos music content, but you can't really use the internal renderer to export, for example, Dolby Vision or anything that is video related. For that, you have to have a much more complex setup. Now, since we are only interested in Dolby Atmos music, this is not an issue for us. But the important thing is that our export function is not in the deliver page. So that's not where we need to look for it. So in order to export, what we need to do is we need to go into the Fairlight menu. And in the Fairlight menu, a little bit hidden, well, actually a lot hidden, under the immersive audio settings, there are the import and export master file essentially kind of commands. So all we really need to do is we need to export the master file. So let's click on export master file. It then asks me the timeline. Now I only have one timeline, so I'm going to name it according to the timeline. I think the name is just timeline. It also asks me whether or not I want to export in Dolby Atmos ADM BWF or in a different format. The one we are going to use here is the ADM broadcast wave file format, because that's the one that we can then re-import into Nuendo. And that's really it. So let's click on the export button, and then it will ask me to essentially export it. So I'm going to simply put it on the desktop. And once again, I just called it timeline. That's all there is to it. Timeline 1. It's exported as a Dolby Atmos ADM file. And let's click save, and then it is exporting everything, embedding the metadata. And if I did everything correctly, I should now have a Dolby Atmos music file that has the bed information, that has all the object information, that has all the automation that is with respect to the positioning of the individual object. So let's see if that's actually what's happened. So I'm going to close DaVinci now, and what I'm going to do is, let me just save that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Nuendo, and I'm going to try to re-import that timeline WAV file that is sitting on my desktop here into Nuendo. So let's just open up Nuendo. Let's just wait until it loads up, and I'm going to simply open up an empty session. So let's create an empty session and let's just put it on the desktop. That's fine. Yeah, here we are. Now, if I want to import an ADM Dolby Atmos file into Nuendo, I just need to import it. So everything I need to do is I just need to go into the file menu, and in the file menu under import there is the option to import an ADM file. So let me import that. And here is the timeline one. That's the one that we just exported from DaVinci Resolve Fairlight. So let's open that up. Now, as soon as I'm opening that up, it asks me what exactly do I want. I can select to have only individual tracks imported, or with the media files or without the media files. What I want to do is I want to import everything. That means that I'm going to import the Dolby Atmos bed. And in case you're confused why the bus object appears twice here, that is because there is a left channel and a right channel. And it was originally a stereo file, but the stereo was mapped to two objects. So we now have a left channel object and a right channel object. They are both called bass. And let's just click on all of them and let's import that, and that will then import everything. It's going to put them into folders nicely and neatly. So that's where everything lives. Now, the first thing that you notice if you look at that is where is the audio, and that's one of the quirks that I'm not quite sure where it comes from. Maybe somebody who is watching this video knows why it is happening that way it is happening, but as it turns out, the time code is slightly off. So these WAV files are here way back. So starting here at 1801, this is where the individual WAV files start. We are mainly interested in the bed and the two bus objects. Now, currently, I don't really have the Atmos setup in Nuendo, so the last thing I need to do in order to really be able to play that is to also complete the Dolby Atmos setup in Nuendo. So in order to do that, I need a track that holds the Dolby Atmos renderer. So let me just add a group track here, and let's make that a 7.1.4 track so that it holds the Dolby Atmos renderer, and let's call that Atmos bus, and let's add that here. And here we are with the Dolby Atmos bus. And in the Dolby Atmos bus, I'm not going to move these things around. So I apologize if that's a little bit kind of cramped right now, but I'm not going to organize that in that short video. So all we really need to do is we need to add the Dolby renderer. And then we need to connect the objects that we've imported through the ADM file. Now, most of it has already been prepared, so Nuendo already knows most of it. The only thing that we need to tell Nuendo is what type of renderer we're going to use. So in the ADM authoring panel, what we need to do is we need to tell the system what renderer we have. It already understands that there is a bed and two objects here, but they are not yet connected to any renderer. So what we need to do is we need to select the renderer of Dolby Atmos, which is the internal renderer here. It's going to point them and it's going to connect them, and here we are. And if we did everything correctly, I should now be able to hear the Dolby Atmos file. Now, you might also see that it also exported the automation correctly. So here are the left object and the right object, and they're moving accordingly. We also see that in the, let me move that here. We also see that in the renderer itself. So the automation essentially came with the Dolby Atmos file, with the Dolby Atmos master file, and everything is working exactly the way it is supposed to work. So if you are interested in Dolby Atmos and you have the studio version of DaVinci Resolve, as long as you are okay with the fact that you can only work within the Dolby Atmos, within the DaVinci Resolve Fairlight digital audio workstation, the DAW portion of DaVinci Resolve, you have a fully self-contained workflow for creating Dolby Atmos music. You don't really need any external renderer. Once again, little caveat, you can't render it in binaurally. There's actually, I'm probably going to make a video in the future. I think I have a workaround about that. But in principle, the Dolby Atmos renderer that is native to DaVinci Resolve Fairlight only renders in stereo. Not a big deal unless you are working professionally, in which case you probably already have a very much more complex setup anyway. And that is really everything I wanted to say today. So you can do that. There's no problem. We can create Dolby Atmos music content in DaVinci Resolve Fairlight. We can export the Dolby Atmos master file. Everything is working exactly the way it is supposed to work. Now, if you like the type of videos that I do, please consider subscribing. And if you liked that particular video, please hit the like button. And other than that, see you in the next video.